And hello, everybody. Welcome inside to the Week 7 Joe Dickey Electric Scoreboard Show on ysnlive.com. Anthony Hartley with you. Mike Ackleston, he had to get out of here as soon as the audible call was done tonight, so I am with you tonight to run down through all of the scores and big plays of the night. We had a great Week 7. There were a lot of games that came down to the wire. In fact, we just got off of the Beaver Local Hubbard game that ended in overtime. The Beavers with the 8-point win after a wild 2-point conversion that wasn't even planned, to be real. It was a 2-point conversion, a bad snap on the PAT, and the improvisation of the Beavers turns into the 2-point conversion. They get the stop on defense on the other end, and that was how we capped off the great night that was Week 7. We have a bunch of announcers that are hopefully going to be calling in today. We will start with Eric Hughes. He's a weekly guest, and we have him on again. Mr. Hughes, how are we doing today, buddy?
Doing well, actually. Just after I left the game, my allergy started picking up, so I guess the game ended at a good time.
Well, yeah, good timing, right? I mean, that's that kind of year. That time of year, though, the weather's changing. Let's talk about McDonald coming in and getting the big victory. I think a lot of people thought this would be a game that was pretty competitive. McDonald was struggling a little bit coming into this game, but McDonald said not so fast.
Yeah, before we get into it, I just want to apologize to McDonald. I had my reservations about them the entire season, but they proved me wrong tonight. They had 6 rushing touchdowns as a team from 4 different ball carriers. Jaden Taylor had 3 of them. They were just a masterclass performance from them, really, against a good Louisville team.
You know what? At the end of the day, as sports personalities, all we can do is give our best opinion. Sometimes we're wrong. We're not experts, right?
Yeah.
So, but what was it about McDonald tonight that just let them dominate this Louisville team that was coming in pretty hot?
McDonald, they just couldn't be stopped in the ground game. Like I said, they had the 6 rushing touchdowns. They played a pretty clean game. They had an interception back in the first quarter. They didn't really have any flags. And then you look over at Louisville's side. Again, young team, going to be growing pains, like I always say with them. They had a couple of interceptions, some flags that killed a couple of their drives. But, yeah, it's a tough loss for them, but they have Jackson Milton coming up.
Yeah, when you talk about this Louisville team and the way they've been playing this year, and everything's been going so well, you never want to lose, of course, but how much do you think a little bit of adversity might be good for a young team to be like, hey, this can't happen. We have to show up every week. If we don't, these teams are good enough in our conference to come out and do this to us.
Well, they have 3 losses this year, but none of them were back-to-back. They lost to Toronto early in the year. They came back, beat Campbell. Lost to Western Reserve a few weeks ago. They came back, beat Middle Ridge last week. And they took a tough loss here, but great chance to right the ship next week against another tough team in Jackson Milton.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first loss though where they were out of the game, right? This was like they were dominated. The Western Reserve game, it was back and forth.
Yeah.
So a little bit of humble pie for Louisville, and that can be good for a young team every now and then.
Yeah, it is.
So talk about going forward next week, Jackson Milton, and what you expect from this game with Louisville versus the Blue Jays.
I didn't see the Jackson Milton score tonight. I know they're having a bit of a rough season so far this year, but MVAC's a good conference. You got Springfield, Western Reserve, Louisville, McDonald now, et cetera, et cetera. And it's at Jackson Milton, so I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. So Louisville's got to be prepared for them.
Yeah, Waterloo was playing Jackson Milton. They won a really close game. Waterloo won a really close game, I should say, over the Blue Jays in that one. I want to get the final, so I'm completely right on this, but I believe it was a 2-point game. I'm checking on our scoreboard brought to you by Brent Pool Spas and Hot Tubs. I'm trying to find, there's a lot of scores, trying to just pinpoint that JF Jackson Milton score.
Yeah.
There it is. 30-28, Waterloo got the win over Jackson Milton. So a tough one for the Blue Jays for sure. So they're going to be coming in motivated. When we talk about McDonald going forward, Eric, what kind of things do you think they can build on? What kind of things do you think they can keep doing well to try to use this win as momentum heading into next week?
Well, I know they play Campbell next week in the Battle of the Devils, Campbell being the Red Devils, McDonald being the Blue Devils. I don't know who they still have to play after that. But, I mean, if they can just build off of it tonight with that wing T offense, those 3 running backs, just keep doing that, run the ball, it's going to be a lot more useful when the weather gets colder.
You talked about McDonald on the offensive side of the ball and how well they were able to run, but their defense doing the job as well. Turnovers, forcing turnovers. What did you see on that side of the ball from McDonald that was so effective?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned during the broadcast for the game, Louisville has their own version of Killer Bees. You got Ricky Wilrich at quarterback, Josh Pales receiver, Gino Perry at running back. But McDonald, they did a great job in this one. They got 2 early interceptions, and they just did a great job on 3rd and 4th down, getting off the field.
All right, Eric. One of the things that we like to do here is nominate maybe a player of the game and maybe a play of the game that you think. So, give us your player of the game tonight for McDonald and maybe a big turning point.
I want to say there's 2 players of the game for McDonald. I'm going to go with Jane Taylor first. He had the 3 touchdown. One of them was from 60 yards out before halftime. He only carried the ball like 5 times, though, so he had like 20 yards to carry, something crazy like that. Then you had Casey Miller, only scored the 1 touchdown. That was the first touch of the game, but he also had those 2 interceptions, like I mentioned, and he forced a fumble at the end of the game. So it could go either way there. But I'd say the play of the game is probably that 60-yard touchdown from Taylor, like I mentioned.
Big plays all around for McDonald. Eric, thank you again for calling in, and what a call you had tonight. And we'll see you right back here for Week 8 next week. We're so
Oh,
close
yeah.
to the end of the season.
Oh, yeah.
You go take care of those allergies, bud.
Do my best.
Got to have you back in full strength next week.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We'll see you soon. Eric Hughes calling the McDonald Louisville game. Maybe a little bit of a surprise for some people. I think people thought not only maybe Lakeview Louisville would win, but also, at least people thought it would be pretty competitive. And McDonald having a great performance. And I think, Eric said it best. Those turnovers that they forced were a big key to this game. When you take a young team and you force them to come back from those turnovers, that can be devastating. And Louisville is a young team, and they're going to have to find ways to come back from that adversity. And like I said, I think every now and then, even though they have 2 losses coming in, I think that that little shot of reality a little bit, that little, okay, if we don't show up, teams in this league especially can come in and beat us pretty bad. So they could have used that, and they will use that. Coach Bamula is a great coach down there for Louisville. They're going to use that to their best advantage and make sure that they're shored up for the rest of the season going forward. In a tough one they have with a very motivated Jackson Milton team that's going to be playing them next week at home. What we're going to do while we wait for other announcers to call in, we're going to bring up the scoreboard and run through scores. The scoreboard on ysnlive.com, brought to you by our good friends over at Burnett Pools, Spas, and Hot Tubs. And there it is there. And I will scroll up so you can see the wonderful sponsor and let you know that the YSN scoreboard for you can be found at ysnlive.com/scores. We have a great crew behind the scenes tonight and every Friday night, making sure that the scoreboard is live updated so you can go and check it whenever you want to see what's going on across the YSN family, because you're sitting at a game or you're watching one of the games on our broadcast and maybe you don't want to look away from the action for too long. You'll pop up your phone, ysnlive.com/scores, and you can easily see what's happening across the YSN family. We will start with a shocker out of Hoban as Walsh Jesuit gets the win over the Knights 19-14. Walsh is a very good team. We saw them in week 1, and we see them rear their ugly head again. We know how good Walsh really is, and that's a big win for them and a tough one to take for Hoban. We go to Beaver. They get the big win over Deer Lakes in PA over there. So the Bobcats with a big win. We just watched Columbian and Southern. What a game this was down the stretch. Southern pulling off the 25-21 victory over the Clippers. But man, this was a game. The Clippers had a chance. They had the ball. They were driving. Could not quite finish that drive to take the lead. So that's a one that Southern is going to escape with. And we told you before, we have told you multiple times how tough of a place the Wigwam is to go in and win. Teams have learned it. Teams have barely escaped there. Columbiana had their chances to escape there, and they just could not do it. Southern with the big win inside the EOAC. Geneva, well, they're very good. We know that. They put up a big spot on Conneaut. Final score here, yeah, you do not read that wrong. That is not a typo, 75-6. Geneva, the Eagles are not to be messed with up there in Ashtabula County. A big one also for Crestview as they roll into Newton Falls and get the big win. Final score was 60-0 over Newton Falls inside the MVAC. We see that Edison and East Liverpool also went into overtime, and it is East Liverpool with a 1-point victory. The Potters on the road. This is a very good Edison team. They had a couple of big wins under their belt this year. So that's a big road victory for the Potters going down and getting it. Another close game in Wellsville as we see East Palestine able to hold off the Tigers 28-27, the final score there. The Bulldogs get the victory. That's a big one. They bounce back from a tough week for the Bulldogs last time out. So to come out, make game-winning plays on the stretch. We talked about this team at length throughout the season. How are they going to be down the stretch of games? Can they make those game-defining plays down the stretch that earn them victories? They were able to do that tonight. Their defense coming up big with a couple of stops, and then their offense with that final drive to kneel the ball, get a couple of key first downs, and then knee out the rest of the clock and get the win over Wellsville. 28-27, the final score there. East Palestine with a win on the road inside the EOAC. Madison all over Edgewood, 42-7. We've seen Madison several times on YSN. They're also a team that we know is very good. Edgewood, he's still trying to find an identity and still struggling on the season. Pymatuning Valley, a big win at home at Fairport Harding as they get the win 38-0 over the Skippers. So the Lakers, no problem there. Grand Valley still no problem with Matthews. They get the big victory over the Mustangs. So both of our 4-0 teams in a row on the scoreboard there with rolling victories. Howland and East playing each other, and the Bears all over the Tigers, 20-6 the final score. East starting to make that playoff push, and I think if you look at the numbers, they're going to be a playoff team if things keep going the way that they have been going. We move into Beaver Local, the game that brought us into the scoreboard show, the game that was kind of our push into the scoreboard show. We know how good this one was. Beaver Local gets the win in overtime, 39-31. And like I said, that 2-point conversion for the Beavers, a wild one. They lined up for the straight PAT. There was a bad snap, and Beaver Local was able to improvise their way to a 2-point conversion. They didn't really need it, though, because their defense stepped up and stopped Hubbard back-to-back sacks on that Hubbard overtime drive. Made it 4th and 13 with goal to go, and then the sack to end the game as well. So the Beaver Local defense steps up and gets a stop in overtime. But what an amazing game this was. Back and forth and back and forth. Each offense with punches and counter punches. And that's exactly the kind of game you like to see down the stretch if you're Coach McKenzie. When you're trying to see, like, how can our team respond to adversity down the stretch of games? What can they do to make these game-winning plays that you're going to have to make in playoff time? And Beaver Local showed that they're able to do that, and they can make a playoff push. They have plenty of games left on their schedule, and they are positioned well, so they can still be a very good postseason team. We go into the score we talked about with Eric Hughes as Jackson Milton will be Lowville's next opponent. They lost a tough one on the road in Waterloo by 2, 30-28 the final score there. We saw LeBray edge out Brookfield by 1 possession, 25-20 the final score. The Vikings get a win against a Brookfield team that was at home, and we all know they were desperate for a win. They would have done anything for a win. They fought their tails off, but LeBray able to escape that. They're able to get that win over the Vikings. That's a tough road win. Like I said, Brookfield was a team that was playing with everything on the table. They needed to win. They were going to throw everything out at the Vikings tonight, and the Vikings were able to just take it. A very fun one in Lakeside as they get a big play to end, well, not end the game, but as close to a walk-off as you can, as the Dragons get the 21-20 victory on the road in Jefferson. Jefferson led this one late, and Lakeside with a big play touchdown to seal the deal in Jefferson. What a atmosphere. I want to give props to Sam Torres. What a call this was to listen to. He was fired up. Both teams played well. What a game. What a game out of Ashtabula County in Jefferson tonight. I almost said last night as if we're already. I'm so used to talking about these scores on Running Point, people. Give me a break. We go to Struthers, and they take care of Lakeview 27-9. The final score, the Wildcats get an 88 victory under their belt. United all over Latonia, although this game was in the balance a little bit early. I mean, Latonia made a score. They were making a couple of defensive stops, but in the end, United just way too much as they win 49-6 over Latonia. And we were, remember last week, if you tuned into the scoreboard show, we were promised Tubas on fire, and we got it. We were sitting on the audible call. We were waiting for it. We were saying, okay, where's these Tubas on fire? We were on the bands for a while. Second half for starting, and I was like, we're staying on this one. I want to see these Tubas on fire. We finally got it. Derek Rhodes was kind enough to zoom in on the tuba on fire too. So props to the United Band Department, always putting on a very creative show with the pyro mechanics down there with the tuba player. Garfield and Liberty played a good game. Garfield had to get a late turnover as Liberty was driving with a chance to tie up the game, but the G-men escape the Leopards' upset bid 20-13. That's a big one for Garfield. They really hadn't been tested yet this season inside the league, so to come up and get a win over a Liberty team that really pushed them was crucial. And speaking of Derek Rhodes, we're going to pop out the scoreboard and we're going to go to our next announcer in the green room, and Derek Rhodes pops up. Hey, how we doing, buddy? You there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. We got you. You had a fun time tonight, huh?
Excellent. Yeah, it was homecoming in Hanoverton, so things went as expected tonight for the Eagles. Congratulations to Miss Kaylee Farmer, the 2024 football homecoming queen, and 7 touchdowns by the Eagles tonight by 6 different players. So great job offensively.
Let's talk about right off the jump. And I was talking, I don't know if you heard it while you were trying to come on. You promised us Tubas with fire. We got Tubas with fire. Let's get that out of the way. Then we can talk about football.
Yes. I mean, how fun is the United football experience, man? These guys are just too fun down there. There's such showmanship. It's great. And another thing that was on fire was the United offense. Interchangeable parts all over the place down there. Tonight they were without one of their leading receivers. I saw Quentin Taylor down there, not in uniform, had a knee brace on, no crutches or anything, but without him, yeah, exactly. But they just ran the ball and imposed their will up front on Latonia.
Derek, you talk about this United offense. In the last 2 weeks, it has really rolled. 3 weeks ago, you remember they went to the Wigwam. They struggled a little bit. Do you think that game kind of showed them what they have to stay away from, what their strengths can be, and maybe a little bit more of an identity as an offense since that game against Southern?
Yeah, and that was early on too. This United offense builds itself week after week, and it shows you something different every week. Tonight, they went bunch formation, 3 running backs behind Parker Newburn under center, and they just went face first up the middle, and they scored twice. Micaiah Haynes, 35 yards and 64 yards. Touchdown runs for him out of that formation. And it's funny, too. Zach Figley kicked 6 PATs tonight. They have another kicker in United as well. Liam Jones, the freshman, came on, had a couple kickoffs and a PAT of his own. So Coach Ogilvy just interchangeable parts all over the place. It's fun. It's so
Coach
fun.
is like, hey, let's see what this freshman has real quick. Let's get him in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got it. He's got it, guys.
Yeah.
They just breed kickers down in United. We knew what kind of kicker that Luke Courtney was. I mean, the soccer team's amazing on the boys' side. So I feel like, yeah, they have kickers. They probably can pick a couple off the soccer team if they really needed to.
It's great. Yeah. So and how nice was tonight, week 7 in the EOAC? A couple slobber knockers there.
We had good games. East Palestine pulls out the 1-point win on the road in Wellsville.
And how about the schedulers with this? I mean, United here now. the week 9 and week 10, they got Valley Christian in Palestine, both on the road. So how about this for bringing down the crown of the conference in the last couple of weeks?
What they said was if United is going to win a conference championship, they're going to earn it down the stretch. I think that's what they said. And when you look at those two, I mean, back to back, I mean, we saw what East Palestine's offense was able to do against Valley Christian. Their defense struggled against Valley, but their offense was definitely dangerous. They've scored a lot of points this year, so United's defense is going to be up for the task for that one. And then Valley Christian, of course, we know what they bring to the table. We're going to see it tomorrow night. Fun. I mean, it's just so physical, but also fast. Like they just mix, they mix big and physical with fast and athletic better than anybody.
Yeah. That's a fun football team to watch also, definitely. So I'm looking forward to that October 19th one. We've got Wellsville for senior night coming into Hanoverton next week. And then 2 weeks, Valley Christian. We're playing that one at Liberty on a Saturday evening. Going to be a good one, man. Going to be
Derek,
a good one.
we watched Latonia's touchdown, and what an awesome play this was. Yes. I mean, Carson Brock was dead to rights. He had nowhere to go. Just kind of heaved it up. I think it was a prayer. But the prayers were answered. The prayers were answered in Hanoverton. Because he had a receiver just fell into his lap. It was like, okay, I'll take it.
And you touched on it. It was 14-6 there, and it was like, wait a minute.
It's getting kind of dicey.
The
Bears?
Yeah. But it's things yet. Once again, the homecoming dance, everybody's having fun tonight because the Eagles roll. So, yeah.
Now, Derek, I was told to ask you by Mike. He's not here, but he needs to know.
I got this.
Where are we on the shirt? Do we have something?
The acronym is EAT. E-A-T.
EAT.
EAT.
So we have to decide what that means.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I'll tell Mike, and we'll come out with some guesses next week for you.
Great. Mr. Gary Altheiser will be joining me next week in Hanoverton, giving me a hand. So can't wait for that. And we will talk to you after the Wellsville game and maybe look forward to a Valley Christian matchup the next week.
Yes, you know that. We love your weekly chats, Derek. Thanks for coming on, and what a great call again, my friend. We'll see you back here for week 8.
We love what we do, man. Thank you, guys.
Derek Rhodes talking to us, and we go right from him to Sam Torres, who might have had the call tonight, buddy. I'm not blowing smoke. We watched the end of that Lakeside game. Wow, you nailed it, but Lakeside nailed it too, man.
Yeah, it was this is one of those games that before the season even started, I just knew it was going to be a classic. These two teams, when you talk about their talent and their athleticism, they just match up so well against each other. The scoring wasn't anywhere near where I thought it was going to be. I honestly thought it was going to be like an arena football game out there, but the defenses really showed up. But it was the back and forth. It was the turnovers and the defensive stops and these huge plays. I mean, you're talking about, J. Anthony Williams potentially stealing the ball from a running back for the second time this year and running it back 80 yards. They figured out that, something on the play was illegal, so they stop it. Two pass plays after that. The first pass play is almost immediately given back as it's an interception dropped by a Jefferson defender. And then they follow that up with a screen pass to Devin Miller that he takes 78 yards to the house, a minute 32. That's not all. It's 19-20. Instead of going for the extra point, they give it to Nate Bartone, who had struggled, had a tough night in that one, but he scores the biggest 2-point conversion of the night. And, they go up 21-20. And then all the way to the final pass. I mean, they're on the 7-yard line. Jefferson's on the 7-yard line, throwing a pass in the corner, running out of time. Terry Brown makes the catch out of bounds. Game time.
The first thing that a lot of things pop up into my mind when you go through that sequence, but the first thing is Jefferson missed opportunities. You have the interception in your hands, and it drops. And the very next play, Lakeside says, "You give me the door open, I'll kick it down." Talk about that and what you saw from Lakeside's ability to say next play, because a lot of kids, especially at this age, they almost throw a pick and then they get kind of tight and they don't want to make a mistake, and that's when even more mistakes happen. So how cool is it to see Lakeside come back from the near turnover and just be aggressive, make a big play, and that huge 70-plus yard touchdown.
I think that's one of the calling cards with their head coach, Terry Henton, this year. He's done it all year. Anytime Omar Ambris, who's the quarterback, who is a first-year quarterback, he's never played quarterback up until this year. He is a senior. He's had some struggles this year where he's thrown interceptions at inopportune times, but Terry has enough, head coach Terry Henton has enough trust in him and belief in him that he always goes right back to the pass. And I know he's got more guts than I do, but for Omar to be able to keep his composure and just throw that screen pass, which had worked. Both teams had multiple touchdowns called back tonight that were over 30 and 40 yards off of those screen passes because of holding calls. My joke is that behind every great play is a holding call to ruin it. That was 100% accurate tonight. But yeah, I mean, it was big time games. It was for a kid who has had so many people, throw doubts on him and that sort of thing. It was a big time play for a kid who really needed it.
I like the call to have a screen pass there because it's a high percentage completion call. So it's like, hey, we're going to put our quarterback in a really good position to succeed and then let an athlete make a really good play. And I think that's Lakeside's bread and butter.
Yeah, it was. It really was. The call was there. The blocking, the run game had in the beginning of the game, Lakeside was running a lot of motions and jets and trying to get that Jefferson defense kind of out of position. And it was working, periodically. But Jefferson during halftime had made adjustments where those jets and the motions were just not working anymore. So they went to these little quick passes. There's a couple really, really big plays in there. I mean, it was. I could not have written that game. If I was a Pulitzer Prize writer, I couldn't have written a game like that.
If they do write a movie, they have to bring you in for the call because I don't think any actor could do what you did for that touchdown. Let's talk about Jefferson's side. To be that close, to come away with a tough loss, we all know Coach Hanna well. He's coached teams that have had tough losses and brought them back from it before. What are some of the conversations you think are going on in that Jefferson locker room?
I really think that Coach Hanna is, because he's going to take all the blame for this one. That's just the type of guy he is. He's not going to put this in the hands of kids. I'm sure, the first thing he did, I've known him for my entire life. I'm sure the first thing he did was apologize to his kids because, he feels like this is not on him. I don't think it's on him. I don't think it's on the players. I think this was just the way the game was going to be played. It was tough. There were some plays. It was such a game of momentum. There was such the first play of the game is a 65-yard kickoff return by Cage Bozar. I mean, and the momentum never really went out of Jefferson's hands and Lakeside just kept kind of chipping away at it. I think the time just got away from him at the end, 5.6 seconds. And Dylan Burlingham was throwing darts all night. He throws 3 passes and 2 of those passes get caught. They just get caught out of bounds. So it's one of those things that I think it will always stick with you. You could see him at the end of the game turning to the press box and basically pleading like there has to be more time. There has to be more time, right? And it had just run out on him. And it's a tough pill to swallow, but he's a coach that's been the highest of the high and he's dealt with the lowest of the low. I'm sure he's going to get through this one too.
Well, I see this Jefferson quarterback play and compete, and I know this is a big comparison because there's a big guy, but I kind of see a little bit of Grant Hitchcock's in that swagger, that competition, the way he's able to throw the ball. Do you see it too? Because I'm kind of seeing it a little bit.
Absolutely. And you know what? And this is not a dig toward Grant Hitchcock at all. Me and Brandon, Coach Hanna have had this conversation before. I think pure arm talent wise, Burlingham may actually have the upper hand in that one. But what separates those two guys are their running ability. And I think that's what he got to learn under was seeing Grant Hitchcock changed games with his ability to run. And Dylan Burlingham, since the kid's been in junior high, has been a running quarterback. This year, he's just kind of really jumped it ahead. I'll tell you a kid who stuck out to me from Jefferson as a kid who's new to the offense this year, new to football, is Michael Riffle. He's a downhill runner. He dragged about 7 Lakeside defenders numerous times for around 8 to 9 yards apiece. It was incredible.
All right, Sam, before I let you go, let's talk about next week for both teams and what Jefferson and Lakeside have in store in week 8.
Yeah, so Lakeside, if I'm not mistaken, they've got a tough one against a Geneva team that almost broke the scoreboard
Right. They
tonight.
scored a lot
Um,
against Conneaut.
Yeah, 68-0 at halftime is one of the craziest scores I've ever seen. So it'll be really interesting. I think they're feeling really good about themselves. But I think what they found out tonight was, in big time moments that they can trust themselves. And I think a Lakeside team that trusts themselves is a very, very dangerous team. Jefferson, they're gonna have to take a week and really just kind of collect themselves, because it doesn't get easier next week when it comes to how big the game is. Next week, they've got Edgewood. This is a trophy game. They play for the Hoadley Cup. All the ill will that you could think of with a rivalry exists. So this one is going to be big. Scott Demos and Larry get to be on the call. That's going to be another one you don't want to miss.
Yeah, Edgewood and Jefferson. We know that every sport. We saw it in volleyball last week. Like they had a blackout in Jefferson because of it. And they had probably one of the biggest volleyball showouts that you'll see in Ashtabula County. So every sport, you're going to take this super seriously. Football, it gets tightened even more. And we know how much there's a little bit of bad blood.
It is. It's
respect, but bad blood.
It's fun to watch because the kids really just go as hard as they possibly can. You don't ever want to see any of the, cheapy stuff and all that stuff,
No.
But you do love to see when the kids genuinely dislike each other for 60 minutes.
Exactly. Dislike each other inside the lines, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a bunch of friends because those schools are so close knit and so close to each other. There are probably a lot of friendships off the field, but for 60 minutes, almost says 60 seconds. For 60 minutes, not so much.
Yeah, as well as I do, Instagram is going to be popping tonight. I can't wait to check out the reels.
Instagram will be popping with your highlights, my friend, because you had a great game. Thanks for calling us, talking about it. We'll see you back here next week for week 8.
Absolutely. I hope I got a voice left for St. John tomorrow. I might have to get a lozenge.
Sounds like you're fine. I think you have that voice that never dies, Sam.
All right, Ant. Thanks so much,
Rest up,
man.
buddy. Go Heralds tomorrow, all right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Sam Torres joining us. Always a fun conversation. Man, I mean it. Like, I'm not blowing smoke, like I said at the top. Great call. We were watching it because it was one of the last games to come in. A great call from him. And Ashtabula Lakeside getting the win over Jefferson. Final score there was 21-20, a game where they trailed late, and then they have the guts and the belief in themselves to go for 2 to win the game pretty much. 21-20. Jefferson had that last chance, but put themselves in positions to win the game with that last touchdown. Let's go back to the scoreboard on ysnlive.com, brought to you by our good friends over at Burnett Pool, Spas, and Hot Tubs. And it's like Sam Torres knew exactly when to call, because when we left and we were talking to Derek Rhodes, we talked about this Jefferson Lakeside score. So we move on and we talk to you about the Struthers and Lakeview. The Wildcats get that win there, 27-9, the final score in Struthers. We talked to Derek Rhodes about United and Latonia. We went through Liberty and Garfield. Garfield getting pushed by a very scrappy Liberty team. They even had the ball late with a chance to tie, but a turnover forced by Garrett Phil Garfield's defense, an interception instead, and they're able to hold on to the 20-13 win. How about a comeback victory for Canfield as they beat Louisville 17-13? That's a lot of computer points for the Cardinals, and they have their chances for playoff berth just went really up. They already had decent chances coming into this week, but a win against Louisville, who's probably good for a couple more wins down in the last 3 games of the year. That's a big win for Canfield. And for Louisville, it's just it stinks. It's another one possession loss for the Leopards. If they figure out how to make game-winning plays consistently, they're going to be a really dangerous team, because for the most part, except for games that they have won, they have kept themselves in games. They have not been blown out yet this year. They have had chances to win every game that they've lost. So those are fixable things that you see in the film room. Like, hey, we can just do this 1 or 2 things a little bit differently and the game falls our way. If they figure that out, they're going to be a dangerous team. This is a different Louisville football team than we've seen the last couple of years. So we're proud to have Louisville as a part of the YSN family. We talked about McDonald with Eric Hughes. He was the first announcer to come on, and McDonald comes into Lowville, and they dominate the Rockets 42-14, a big win for McDonald in a game that I think a lot of people thought would be pretty competitive, and McDonald had other plans. Austintown Fitch gets the win over Massillon Perry. This was confusing all day for us at the audible call because there were two Perrys at the same time. We had to make sure we were emphasizing we were going to Massillon Perry and we were going to Perry. But Massillon Perry was in the much better game. So you saw that a lot more on the audible call. Fitch able to hang on 20-15, a big defensive stop late. No shocker there of Fitch's defense. Other than that, Ursuline game has played really well this year. Mineral Ridge with a big win over Campbell. This was actually my pick before the audible call, like when we were doing our intro of my most competitive game of the night, and it did not turn out that way. Mineral Ridge all over the Red Devils, 40-8, the final score. They beat Campbell. What a win for the Rams after a tough one against Lowville, where they had the late lead and they gave it up. So the Rams come in with a vengeance, and they do not let the up-and-coming Campbell Red Devils get any kind of room to get any momentum. Salem with a big win over Minerva. This one was one that we all expected, 55-0. Quakers over the Lions. Mohawk and PA, they get the 35-19 win over New Brighton over in Pennsylvania to get themselves another victory under their belt. Poland with the big shutout of Niles. They win 42-0 over the Dragons. Perry Orange is a very good football team, but they found out what the reigning state champs are all about. The Pirates all over in this one, 62-0. The final score there. JFK Rootstown was a really good game down the stretch. Rootstown got a fumble late. They had the ball with a chance to go out and win it, but JFK's defense, they stand tall and they hold on to their win. 20-14 in the final score over the Rovers. A big win for JFK. Two big wins in a row against teams in those divisions that usually are in the playoffs and usually make deep runs in Mogador and Rootstown. So a big 2 weeks for JFK when they talk about teams that they can meet later on down the road. South Range goes into Arrowhead Stadium, and they get a little bit of a fight from Girard. There were some explosive plays on the Indian side of the ball, but South Range so hard to just keep going against, and the Raiders get their first road victory of the season. This is their first road game of the season. All Raiders 55-27. They get the win over the Indians in Arrowhead. We continue on. A good one in in Champion with Southeast playing the Flashes 22-16. The Pirates get the win over Champion. This was a chance for the Flashes to get their first win of the year. They were close. They're getting their first-year head coach, putting them in the right positions to win. They'll find themselves eventually, but it just wasn't tonight. Springfield in a defensive struggle gets the win over Western Reserve on the road, 12-0. The final score there. Springfield proving they can kind of win in two different ways. They've been an offensive team most of the season, but their defense can be relied on to win games in a low-scoring affair. They proved that one here with the 12-0 win over Western Reserve. The Battle of the Irish goes to Ursuline. And I think anyone that looked at St. Vincent St. Mary, you never want to overlook a team, but they were 1-5 coming into the day, and you never want to be that kind of team coming into Ursuline. Next week for Ursuline, though, is the game you really, really want to keep an eye on as they travel to Villa Anna St. Joe's, and that is a very good football team. So that will be a big test for the Irish. This night, not so much. They were able to win handedly over St. Vincent St. Mary, 37-7, your final score from Stambaugh Stadium. A tough one for Boardman. They had the lead. They just could not hold on to it. A 2-minute drive for Warren Harding scores a touchdown. They went for two to make it a 7-point game. They missed it, but Boardman could not move on the last drive, and Boardman falls to Warren Harding late, 19-14. And then West Branch to round out the scoreboard. They're all over Marlington, 54-14, the final score in that one. So a great week 7 for you. That is the scoreboard. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our last announcer that popped in, and it is Mr. Ty Bartell coming on. and we'll bring him on. We'll take down the scoreboard since we ran through the scores. Ty, we talked about your Fitch. You're back in the nest. What was it like to be back home tonight, buddy?
Oh, it was a fun game. We knew it was going to be a nice matchup there between the Falcons and the Panthers, and it showcased it too. Defense was really the highlight and spotlight of the show. The Falcons showcased some new talent as you had new ones at the quarterback. You had Junie Higgs starting at running back too. You had Colin Callagher starting at quarterback tonight, a sophomore. And I mean, he had ice in his veins tonight, from my perspective too, because didn't turn the ball over, made a lot of completions. Brady Evans, his favorite target, and we know that Evans name from Tyler Evans in the past too, with Austintown Fitch. He's over at West Virginia too, balling out with college football. But we know that Evans' name runs deep too. Brady Evans was found for some big plays. He had a highlight level catch for a touchdown in the second quarter to tie the game up. You should definitely see that when I say highlight candidate for the week, no doubt. But yeah, it was really fun to see with new guys starting in big crucial positions. They were able to come through in certain spots too and get a gritty win tonight, 20-15.
This is a Fitch team coming off their first loss. They needed to bounce back, and they get it in a big way. What do you see from the swagger and the confidence of the Falcons tonight?
I think they were just trying to find that kind of confidence again after you get shut out the week before. They kind of revamped some things. They changed some things up, put some new guys in some crucial positions. And Perry came out. They started with possession. They scored immediately. First possession, touchdown right down the field. And they were rushing the ball really well, getting big gains. And then it was really that question of, all right, now, what are you made of? You're down on the scoreboard now. There's nothing that's going to bail you out. You need to score points. And Falcons were able to put together some drives, and they were able to off a couple of them too. And they were able to find the end zone in that first half. And that was huge, I think, for the confidence of Callagher behind center and just getting the rhythm flowing in that offense too when you have some newer guys up.
What I loved about that Fitch, the way they started the game, they gave up a score, and for kids in high school, that could have been really easy to go, well, here we go again. Our defense struggled last week, and we're going to struggle again this week. But from that point on, solid defense. I mean, Maslin and Perry only scored 15 total points, so they only had 8 more points after that first touchdown. That I thought, I mean, you can agree or disagree, but I think that was the performance of the night. The Fitch defense getting back to what works so well for Fitch. I think they're a defensive first team, and their defense kind of woke up after that first possession.
It was, defense highlighted the show too. And I mean, shout out Maslin Perry too. I mean, they had it where the Fitch got the ball on their 35-yard line, the Perry's 35-yard line, couldn't score, and got the ball at Perry's 30-yard line and couldn't score. So Perry's defense came up in some big moments too, but so did the Falcons defense. Junie Higgs gets the big interception at the end to help seal the game too. One of 2 interceptions that the Falcons get. They also get a fumble turnover, and those 3 turnovers help really. We know the turnover battle, right, Anthony? That old cliche too. You win the turnover battle, you usually win the game. Well, the Falcons get the 3 turnovers too, and that's definitely helping. That was the key too. Both defenses played really well, but those 3 turnovers too were the big key. The Falcons were able to force that.
Cliches are cliches because they've worked for a long time, right? And winning the turnover battle wins football. I know it's coach talk, but it's obvious. If you win the turnover battle 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to win that football game. And Fitch gets back to kind of what they're made of. Let's talk about what's ahead for Fitch. They have more tough games. Nothing's easy for this Fitch Falcons team. What do you see going forward? What do they have in store next week?
I think, going out to Erie McDowell, out across state borders, going to the Keystone State. This is a team that just beat Villangela St. Joe. So, I mean, that we know how big of a contender VASJ is week to week and year to year, always in the regional conversation, right? So, I mean, this is an Erie McDowell team. They're a serious team. They got some serious wins, and going over there, too, it's never easy, too. And we know how PA football is. They're just as serious as us here in Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania. They can ball out as well, too. So, Falcons are going to have to take a little bit of a road trip across to the Keystone State. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be another tough test too, but I mean, it's a really short amount of time you have to wait before you get another Ursuline level type of opponent, right? Another test to where you could say, all right, here's another chance to try to swing for the fences and see if we can get a big win here.
I wouldn't be surprised if Erie McDowell gets a hold of Ursuline. Like, hey, we want that Fitch tape, and we'll give you the VASJ tape because you're playing them next week. So let's have a deal there. That'd be a pretty smart phone call for Erie McDowell to make.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, we know how Western Pennsylvania can ball out as well. So that's going to be a good matchup, no doubt. I'm intrigued to see if the Falcons keep with this new offense too, and how they're going to be able to perform against a tough opponent like that.
Let's just, because you know TJ Parker so well, so do we. What do you think, gave him the confidence to say, hey, we're going to try something new in this week? I mean, it wasn't a panic try. They weren't panicking, but I think he realized our offense got away with some poor performances by our defense in the first handful of weeks of the season, and they got a little bit of exposed against Ursuline. Let's make a couple of changes. What kind of coaching does that say about TJ Parker?
Yeah, and of course there's a couple injuries that kind of help lead to the decision, but there's some key positions too where you just make that kind of change. And I think it's not just losing, but I think the way you lose and not being able to get a point. And I mean, it was touted as a big matchup, and they kind of felt like they left a lot on the table there. So sometimes the best way to kind of reignite an offense too is, okay, let's just shift everything, let's change everything up, and let's just see if this lights a fire under guys. And it worked tonight. It was able to it paid off in a win, and we know week to week a win is a win is a win. 6-1 through 7 weeks. I'm sure the Falcons and everyone in Falcon Nation is going to take that, no doubt, right, and get a winning season now, guaranteed.
I really respect coaches that get proof or film that says, hey, this won't fit, like this round peg won't fit in this square hole. And they don't keep trying. They just kind of, okay, let's grab the square hole. Let's get the square hole in there. And let's grab the square piece and get it in. So making adjustments on the fly, not being afraid to do that. Love coaches that have just kind of the confidence in their kids to do that, and also this the humbleness to be able to do that, because you don't have pride in your own offense that you built for the first 5 weeks of the season. You just say, if we need to change, we're going to change. And I think TJ Parker we already knew he was a good coach, right? We already knew he was a great coach, but he just proves it time and time again. And I think this week was another great example. Ty, great call, my man. Glad you were back home in the nest. I know you enjoyed it. Thanks for calling in, and we'll see you back here next week for week 8.
We'll see you, brother. Nice talking with you, Ant.
You got it, buddy. Ty Bartell calling that Fitch win over Maslin Perry, 20-15. The Falcons get the win. We went over the scoreboard before he called in, so all the scores have been tallied. You can find them over at ysnlive.com/scores. And let's see, right now we're going to lead you right into the OT overtime report over at WFMJ 21. Our good friends over there, Dana Ballish, Brittany Bissell, have great coverage of the high school football week 7, highlights from a lot of different games throughout the area. So make sure to tune into that. And we'll be back here for week 8. Audible call starting around 7 o'clock. Dickey Electric Scoreboard show starting after. Whole slate of games like always. Don't miss week 8. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to the games and the Audible call and the Scoreboard show this week. And we hope you have a great 7 days. Come back with us next Friday.
YSN thanks you